We've got the Zuschauer.
Echt?
Mhm.
Wow.
Okay.
Now our shit's getting real. Okay, Gott sei Dank, das habe ich angezeigt. Ich sehe keine Rückfragen. Ich sehe 0, gar keine Fragen.
E-Mail.
Egal, per E-Mail. Wo ist denn der Chat hier? Wow.
Oh. Okay. So now it's getting official.
We have 2 viewers. If you want, if you find it, I don't know how you can access it. You can type in some questions in the chat. We will live demo it for some illustration. Because of that, you see NV Alt in the background and us suckers in the right bottom corner. And if you have no questions, then we will start with the first question Peter asked. But you can intervene via chat if you want. English is not so very good. Okay, first question. What do you not put into your Zettelkasten? Christian and I, we have different approaches because we use the Zettelkasten in a quite different manner. My approach is the include everything everything what I have in the Zettelkasten, in my archive. That means I have basically 4 big departments which I mark with some special hashtags, and that means I have #W, that is all scientific stuff. That means everything that has some scientific value. Then I have #S, that marks everything that has practical application for the body. That means something about training, for sports, for nutrition, basically everything that has something to do with the body. Then I have #L, that is everything that goes in the pragmatic, that can be something about business, that can be something about life, something about ethics or whatnot. The important is that you can apply it or it's meant to be applicable. And I have #K, that stands for everything that is related to arts. So I put in or I mark every node with #K when it contains something about music, when I write something about or something for some novels that I write, everything like that. And I chose that because I have several purposes for my Zettelkasten. The first thing is the Zettelkasten method should follow directly what is the essence of knowledge work, what I call it. And we have in epistemology, I have mainly 2 main paradigms. The first one is whether something is true or not, and that is my #W. And the other goal of thinking, the other goal of every epistemic action, if you will, if you can call it like that, is pragmatic. So you try to understand, to think, to whatnot, to do something, and that's my #L. And the sports department falls kind of in between, but for me it's important to distinguish that because everything that has to do with the body is a major part for me. because I'm a personal coach, and therefore I need a more focused access to that. Now I don't use these meta hashtags so much, but it's kind of safe play to have the possibility to filter the search further down for different paradigms of knowledge work. Therefore, I have everything in my Zettelkasten, in my archive. That means I can't think of what. I have passwords in it. Christian calls it a security leak. I have reflections about my personal life and basically everything. And that the main reason all this comes handy because I just work in my Zettelkasten. I work in my archive, and I don't have to separate nothing. That's quite similar to the getting things done method because I don't have to. I work. I think, and all my. I want to say all my work is basically thinking or thinking in written form. Therefore, I can just live in my archive and don't have to separate any areas. Just like in the getting things done, which should be used like an approach to access life and not just an area of responsibility. How do you do it with your archive, Christian?
Oh, thanks, Sascha, for this great transition. Historically, I used my archive in a different way from how I use it today, because when I started my Zettelkasten, I have followed. I don't remember his last name. I called him Doug. Look for the first name Doug on zettelkasten.de via Google, and you'll find the first posts from 3 or 4 years ago where I detailed the process. And from him I borrowed the concept of node categories, which were not content categories, but meta categories. So I separated my nodes into two nodes about myself, basically like a diary. I've got diary entries in there from the first year or the first years. I've got or I used a category for citations every time when I read a book and created a Zettel node to to take hold of the thought by the author. I used the category, I think it was T, because of thought, T for thought, and C for I have no clue. But then I had another category which was R, and I think R meant reflection. So when I had a thought about something I read in a book, I put this into another Zettel node with another category. So I've got this. I had this this hierarchy of categories with a very elaborate tagging scheme to allow subcategories and stuff like that. And then years later, I totally ditched that approach because the complexity didn't bring any benefit. This was a point where Sascha and I disagreed for a long time until he, I want to say, convinced me to go a more minimal route, but it boiled down to accusations of insanity and more personal stuff. I don't want
psychological warfare.
Yeah.
I'm quite good at it.
Yeah, and so these categories, when I ditched them, I moved everything personal out of my archive. I removed diary entries. I still do a digital diary, but not inside my Zettelkasten archive. So everything that's in my notes folder is either a citation or a comment on a citation or any creative idea I came up with myself. Basically anything that I want to reuse later for some product, be it a book, be it a blog post, be it well, a video, everything that can be used later will move into the archive. And diary entries, in principle, don't qualify in my case. There are some personal reflections, some very personal thoughts that I still put in there because it's not about taking note of the event, which would be part of my diary, but because it's about taking note of the thought I had about the reflection itself. Like when I drank very strong coffee for the first time, the stuff that happened to me was very confusing in the beginning because I wasn't used to such a high dosage of caffeine, and the note I wrote boils down to what I found coffee to be like. I named this, called this like summoning a demon, which I wasn't able to control because it overwhelmed me. And this metaphor is part of the Zettelkasten, while pictures of me lying around would be part of my diary. So diary entries are not part of my Zettelkasten. Passwords are definitely not part of my Zettelkasten because I, like Sascha, use Dropbox to synchronize my archive, and this would be very, very, very insecure. Don't do this. So everything that's in my archive is reusable for production. That's my criterion.
Yeah, and that's I think this is the way how you can learn from both of our approaches, because you have to really be clear about for what purpose you have the archive. I have like a three-stage step to model it. So on the bottom is knowledge work and how it works. Knowledge work and how it works or how it functions is right at the bottom. That is what you want to realize. This is what you want to model. So it's not purely my job, but it's part of the theory of the Zettelkasten method, which I didn't include it yet in the German version, but it will be included in the next edition, and of course in the upcoming online course. Because nobody of us is willing to put up the work of translating such a difficult translation. And therefore we decided to just make it in a video course, because it's the bad English is more forgivable, we hope. And then the next layer is the Zettelkasten method, and the method, and I want or the method as I coin it, is nothing that has anything to do with techniques. It's about principles. And I got into I don't want to say in a fight with Daniel Lüdecke, but we had a little argue in the comment section in our blog, because he says that Folgezettel, which are basically subcategories or like branching the notes, are a principle and therefore basics. And I said, okay, it's just a technique to apply the principle of connection. And you can look it up if you Google Folgezettel on our or search Folgezettel on our blog. But this kind of questions are important to or for me to make clear what is part of the Zettelkasten method and what is a specialization and actualization and application that is specific to an individual. Because at first, I was totally against the technique of Folgezettel, of branching and splitting notes in like hierarchical structures. But then I think Dan Scheffler was it. He showed the a very intelligent approach how to use this, and he used this in his work with with concepts, and it was more philosophical work, and there it's absolutely perfect. For me, it's not applicable because I don't have such a specialist purpose. So everything goes in it, everything that counts as knowledge or information. Therefore, I have no room, have no flexibility to be inflexible if you want it. So I need to be very broad in my approach to be able to handle every kind of knowledge. And you saw it in my double hash categories that I follow mostly the paradigms of knowledge work that are there, that are also quite based on quite abstract principles in theory of knowledge and philosophy of science, as I try to understand it. And then you have the third layer, the less important layer, and that is the software layer. And the software has the only function to make principles of the Zettelkasten method happen. That means that you have to be very flexible in the software, because the principles of the Zettelkasten will change slowly, and the principles of the knowledge work will change the slowest. That means the principles of the stage of the software will change quite rapidly, and therefore a software agnostic approach, that means an approach that allows you to switch from software to software, is quite important. And that is the main reason why we tried, we limited ourselves to things that are, or to techniques and to realize principles that are possible in NV-Alt, because NV-Alt, in my non-technical, non-geeky view, is just a search for what now?
Folder.
A folder with text files, nothing more, and everything else is derived from that. So you have very little in the software to realize very much, very much in the Zettelkasten method. And that's the whole idea behind that. So the first thing you have to know is, okay, what is what you really want? My Zettelkasten is basically a tool for knowledge work. So the abstract action of knowledge work has to have a counterpart in the reality, and that is my Zettelkasten, and that is now NV-Alt, and later, I hope, the great truth of the true royal Zettelkasten app.
So you're basically saying that everything that qualifies as knowledge work will go into the Zettelkasten app of your choice, into the archive, while everything that's not knowledge work and does not adhere to the principles of the Zettelkasten method and is not compatible to the software goes out.
That means for me, because I have a very broad approach, or I work on very broad areas of topics, I include basically everything that I think, besides very personal notes that are only applicable to me, that are reflections, or if I write something for a novel or something like that, that doesn't count as knowledge, but rather as a piece of art. It's more like the difference that knowledge is something writing about something, and novel work is just writing and creating something that stands for itself. Like I wouldn't include include a poem that I wrote in the Zettelkasten, perhaps, unless it's a symbol and I will analyze it and make it a part of some writing project or some knowledge work. For example, I would include aphorism of Nietzsche's, even though it's more like poem, but it's just the outer form. So it can be very tricky, but if you or I'm pretty clear in my intent what knowledge work is and what I want to do, and therefore it's pretty easy to me for me the decision that prosa fiction writing. So basically, stories are not part of the archive, and very personal stuff that applies to me is not part of the archive. But everything else, of course, is, because everything counts as knowledge work.
But since you are writing a novel, a fiction, in your pastime, how does the work you do for that relate to the Zettelkasten method, and where does the creative writing begin?
Yeah, as a if you are a writer, you would you are very familiar to the distinction about what is really text and what are your notes and about the text, and therefore everything that is about a text, about the story, like I would include character biographies for some characters, descriptions for landscapes and everything else, even fictive historical documents, which is kind of gray zone, because imagine in a fantasy setting, imagine some elder would write something about the great ancestors of something, and if you write that, you have to be very very what do you call it? Very abwichsen.
I won't translate it.
You are very lyric, and you have to write very lyric and pretend to be this ancient guy and write it down, but in fact it's just another way of presenting it. But the story itself, dialogues and something like that, are not included in the archive, but they could. It's my personal decision, and I decided it because the archive is mainly for knowledge work, and therefore I have a clear distinction in my head that knowledge work is in the archive, and writing and making art, if you will, is not in the archive. And that's another important point for me, that the method, as you apply it and really do it, needs to kind of similar to real world distinction. You wouldn't, if you have an archive, you wouldn't do something like have a very big piece of paper and then write it from top to down and have like an infinite paper roll or something. Even though it's possible, it's very hard on the mind, and it's hard on my mind if I would stick everything together, like making art and making knowledge work. So making art is in the Ulysses app for me, basically, and knowledge work is in NV Art at this moment, and that makes it very easy for me, or easier at least.
So the like when we wrote on the blog about what is a Zettel node, where does it start, where does it end, what is the atom of a node, its essence, and why don't you just use a single text document instead? So there was this point that the mental model is hard when you think in chunks, but instead of seeing chunks, you see one list.
Yeah.
And so the switch between applications is a help to switch modes. And
yeah, it's basically the same you told me when you talk about programming. Why don't you write just code from top to end in one file? Because it's hard to handle. It's hard on the mind, and you have to respect that the mind works in a certain way. That's perhaps it's like a more bottom layer than knowledge work, because our brain works in distinct or in some principles, and you have to respect the way the brain works, the way the human mind works, and yeah, I think that's the main reason. You can do it. It's not like it's impossible or it's against any rule and it's not true enough or whatever. But in my opinion, the practical side of the Zettelkasten method has to be very practical. So you have to be fast, and nothing should hinder you, and it should be tested. It should be tested because if you write a lot in your archive, it's more productive. If you don't write a lot in your archive, it's not productive. But why? Is it not inspiring enough? Is it for you too boring? I had one client who it was mainly about how to be a trainer, and I consulted him, and I advised him to have a physical Zettelkasten, because it was very hard for him to grasp the principles in an abstract digital world, and he was not very keen to apply it in the digital world, but it was very easy for him to apply it in the in a physical Zettelkasten. So he had just a physical Zettelkasten, like the good old Luhmann, with paper, slips of paper, and a wooden basket, a wooden box, yeah, a wooden box to contain it, and it works better. It works way better. And
then again, we started on paper too.
Yeah, you did it too, yeah.
10 years ago, yeah.
You didn't show me.
I think I threw everything away except a few notes on a particular book, because I started my first Zettelkasten on paper to take notes of my role-playing game that I wanted to write, which is basically planning the fantasy setting, making a hypertext of the plot ideas I had in mind, and I put it on very small index cards, and it was a mess, but I could still draw small maps on it and faces and stuff like that, which was fun. And then I started to include other stuff, and then the box was full, and I found it hard to handle already. So I thought, well,
yeah, that's the same distinction. You would write something about the game, but you wouldn't code the game in the box.
Yeah.
Even if the box was digital. That's kind of the same distinction I make. You wouldn't code in the archive, but you save snippets of code for later use. And that's the same thing I do. And the funny story is, when I think about that, I started it physical too, but my Zettelkasten, because I was very amazed about the Zettelkasten of Luhmann, as I heard, and I read the article he wrote about the Zettelkasten, and then I started the Zettelkasten about the Zettelkasten, and it was just big papers, this format DIN A4, and I started with Node 1. I just copied the filing system of Luhmann, and it was great fun because you could feel it, how the Zettelkasten developed, but very quickly it was hard to handle. And when I saw, especially I experimented half-assed with some apps, but especially when I saw how Christian worked with apps and how fast it was and what you can do in the digital world, it was a no-brainer to change it to digital world. Because I'm a knowledge worker, as I said, some people would be way better off to do it in a physical way because they are not prone to digital work, or it's very specific. If you have like a very limited area of interest or something like that, or a single project or whatnot, it's time limited, or every limitation makes a physical Zettelkasten more possible, and a very high set of limitations, or very narrow limitations, would make a physical Zettelkasten even imperative, because then it's the better solution. But again, it's always about individuality. The principles of knowledge work are quite non-individual, but the application from which principles you take from the Zettelkasten method, which is basically just applied knowledge work, the set is very individual. You don't have to use everything.
Maybe when I reviewed my last paper-based project Zettelkasten, we can talk more about it. It looks like this, and this is the box, or one of the boxes where I started the paper-based stuff years ago, and I used this box in October to plan a talk, and I can work fast on paper, so I thought, well, why not, doodle and sketch things for the slides on paper, and put very limited textual notes on there, so I can see it in two-dimensional space, reorganize it and stuff like that. And this is just an intermediate step for me. It's not. I used it to assemble the talk and the slides for the talk, but this is not the material I would type into my Zettelkasten one-on-one, because some ideas are spread over multiple nodes, some ideas are derived from my Zettelkasten, some stuff was creative thought during, which came up during the process, and this is like scrap paper, like you take notes when you read, like engagement notes, when you read a book and you take engagement notes, you may have to write a lot of stuff down to make sense of it, and find connections, and then go back a few pages and expand when you learn more while you read. And in the end, you have to review it and boil it down to the essentials, and only that will move into the Zettelkasten. And when I worked with a physical Zettelkasten, I just put stuff on the paper notes and paper slips, put them in there, and then they were official. I didn't think about the distinction back then. And I think a physical Zettelkasten for complex topics can work to buffer what you learn from what you will take and keep for a long time.
Yeah, it's like Luhmann would call it re-entry. It's or self-similarity. The Zettelkasten method, because it just mimics the knowledge work, can be applied to every stage of knowledge work. It's the same when writing outlines. You can write for a writing project. You can write a big outline which points out everything, and then when you want to write just one paragraph, you can write spontaneous mini outlines to make sure that the paragraph will be well structured. And the principle of writing an outline will be the same, but the scale is different. And I think that's the way Christian worked with the physical slipnote, or the slipnote box, because the physical slipnote box uses the same principles. It's like atomicity, so you write one thought on one note, and whatnot. It should be. It's of course it's unique, because the note is just a unique entity in the world we live in, and but it's like very in a very narrow space of room and time, if you will, apply the big concept, and the same concept can create a big archive. It's like Nassim Taleb calls it. It's like the world is organized in self-similarities, like fractals. So you have populations, but populations have individuals, and individuals have populations of cells. So it's just scaling, but the principles hold the same. And the Zettelkasten method is like a book, or like a toolbox of these principles that mimic knowledge work, and are applicable to spontaneous knowledge work, for long-term knowledge work, or whatnot, or even physical slip boxes that you just use for a single project, or like I do it, like for an archive that is my life or contains my lifetime project. And yeah, what I want to append is I talked with Johannes Schmidt, the scientist. Greets to Johannes if you see it. um, how Luhmann probably worked. It's more like speculation, or not purely speculation, but rational speculation, if you will. And he thought, that because you saw it in his Zettelkasten that it was very historical. So he basically used, I think, in my opinion, and Johannes explained to me like that. He used the same approach Christian used for a single project, but the Zettel of the single project remained just in the big archive of him, and because he worked on several projects that were similar, he could extract the similarities. So if we have like 10 projects and 4 of them contain concepts about system theory, he could later, with the use of his register and other tools perhaps, or other methods perhaps, he could take these 3 things and have another project that goes more in depth with a system theory. And yeah, therefore you can see it's like this ever repeating concept of self-similarity. There are few principles that are applied over and over again, and though they expand the gestalt of reality, if you call it like this, a bit abstract and in English, of course.
Now that you mention it, I think if the notes on here were not so minimalistic, because some paper slips contain only one word, which serve as slides for section headings or stuff like this, or because or maybe just to make a joke or elaborate on a point or something like that. But in essence, this is not hypertext. This is a single sequence of nodes or node drafts, because they're not ready for the Zettelkasten. And node sequences of Folgezettel are just another kind of connection, and just as you mentioned in the beginning. So you could say that this is a story, or Daniel Lüdiker would say it's a story too. It's a story arc of my work with software architecture, and this story arc will move into a sequence of nodes, because I will create an outline for this, because there's the overarching topic I discussed here is still valid, and then I will link to the Zettel I write from this in sequence, because the sequence makes sense, discuss it, link to existing nodes from my archive, but the sequence itself will then be part of my Zettelkasten, and this is the draft version of the sequence that's not yet existent in my archive, but that will exist maybe in a week or 2 or something. But I still think that this that there's a problem with this approach when you do it a lot of times, because because this is not hypertextual, because there are not node ideas. When I put it in here, I changed the sequence, and by changing the sequence, I can't reconstruct it when I pour it out. I'm screwed when I just drop the box now. And so I think about the limits of self-similarity, because the connections are missing in here. Even though, put otherwise, even though this is limited, it is still similar enough to be to be compatible with my node archive, because it still uses very, very basic principles, like the principle of atomicity, as you mentioned, even though there are no connections, but there are implicit connections because of the sequence. Just as you take notes on paper, there's a sequence of bullet points you put on paper, and the sequence is still an implicit connection, and thus can be translated into you're doing a demo in NV still can be translated easily into your Zettelkasten.
So I just will demonstrate it. I think it will be the last point. We are talking way too long. How to apply one principle of in different techniques. So the principle is now sequencing. Let's say we call it sequencing. Now we create a node, sequence. Oh.
This is live, ladies and gentlemen.
And I'm German. Very German, yeah. So if we do it like that, now we have the sequence. So the sequence is now fixed. That is what I call a structured Zettel. So I have similar things like that. So imagine this would be just notes about topic, and this would contain an outline. So if Christian would want to digitalize his slipbox and the content of it, he could just do it like that. And if he would want to branch it, it would be like that, and we would have just in this node we have saved a structure. This is a structure. It's like it's a hierarchy structure of these three nodes, and of three actual nodes and two node ideas. But we can do it just like here. So if I put I think it wouldn't be working. So, but if I would use this principle, so you can see it here. So you can see, okay, it's in reverse order, of course, yet now. But you can see that I can just branch the node and branch the node and branch the node like infinite. So this branching or this sequencing of nodes is the principle, but I applied two different techniques. The first is just creating a structured Zettel that contains the sequence and the hierarchical structure. The second technique would be using the naming of the node. I don't recommend this approach. It's just for demo. I have a very patriarchic point of view about what techniques in a digital world will work and what not. Because mostly of experience, I used them all and was disappointed a lot. But this is quite short demo how the difference between principle and technique is. This is a technique, and this is a technique, but the principle is just sequence or hierarchy, and the principles are more or less rooted in knowledge work, in the abstract world of what knowledge is or what not. What do you think, brother?
Excellent summary of the stuff I said, you said, we said. I didn't want to make any particular point. I was just talking aloud when I looked at this box, so I think let's call it a day and keep it as it is.
Yeah, just to wrap it up, first thing, be clear in your intent. What is your archive? Then you decide what goes in the archive. Thanks for the question, Peter. I include next to everything what I count knowledge work, and just exclude very personal stuff that is only applicable to me, which is not much because I have I think that most of my reflections are applicable to many areas of life and other lives. And of course, writing fiction or the writing itself is not included. What's actually included in your Zettelkasten now?
Not diary notes, but it's my situation is easier because I only do technical writing. I do non-fiction writing, and so when I find information, I can put it in there, and it can directly become part of everything I will ever write. Maybe not the role-playing game story itself, but then again, JRPGs or Japanese role-playing games usually don't have very complex stories. Maybe a piece of paper in my drawer will suffice to realize that maybe in 10 years or 20 or whatever.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and just keep in mind, I think it's not very easy in blog posts to really show what the difference is and what and to show the complexity of knowledge work as we see it. But I hoped that with a short demo here, it's quite you grasp an idea what the difference between principle and technique is, and if you have questions about that, anything what you want, you can ask them. Our 3 viewers were quite quiet. The first is fleeing because of my blying, but now we are really done. I wish you a good day.
I don't. Yeah, have a good time. See you on the blog. When you have questions, leave them below the video or on the blog post. Doesn't matter. We look at both. See you next time.
Bye bye.